Welcome to Audio Tales AI, your destination for captivating stories. Today, we unveil a tale filled with unexpected and life-changing decisions. Remember to subscribe, hit the bell icon, and let's dive in.
I'm facing a significant struggle and could use some advice and support from others. I'm a 49-year-old woman, and for this conversation, you can call me Jan. While my husband, who is 50, will be Jerry. These names aren't our real ones, and I plan to delete this account after posting to protect our privacy. Jerry and I have enjoyed a happy marriage for 27 years. And have two wonderful children, a 26-year-old son, and a 24-year-old daughter. He was my first love and remains the only man I've ever truly loved. We've been a couple for over 30 years, having started dating when I was 18. I fell head over heels in love with Jerry, and he proposed to me just 7 months into our relationship. I eagerly accepted and was ready to marry him right then and there. At that time, he was in his second year of college, and I was working at a local hardware store franchise in our hometown. Our plan was to remain engaged until he graduated and secured a job before tying the knot. I was perfectly fine with this, even though it meant waiting nearly 3 years to get married because my love for Jerry was so deep, and I was excited about spending the rest of my life with him. The college he attended was located in the capital city of our state, a little over 2 hours from our hometown. Normally, he would come home nearly every weekend to be with me. However, there were occasional weekends when he stayed at school to study or due to bad weather. On those weekends, we'd spend hours on the phone talking multiple times a day. Keep in mind, this happened about 30 years ago, so there were no smartphones, texting, or internet. We relied on good old-fashioned landline phones. It's funny, I feel so old reminiscing about this. Around a year into our engagement, I started feeling impatient and suggested we get married sooner instead of waiting another 2 years until he graduated. I explained how much I wanted to become his wife, expressing my concerns that he might meet someone else at school and leave me, which was probably just me projecting my fears. Jerry reassured me that he would never do such a thing and professed his love. He pointed out that waiting would allow us to make sure we were truly compatible and financially ready to start a family. Now here's where I made a big mistake. There was this guy, let's call him Jim, who was an electrician and a regular customer at the hardware store, coming in for supplies 2-3 times a week. We had a friendly rapport and exchanged pleasantries during his visit. Over time, he began flirting with me and making advances. I told him, I'm sorry, but I'm engaged. Jim responded by saying he was engaged too, but he felt such a strong connection that he'd be willing to take a risk for one chance. This back-and-forth flirting continued for weeks. Then one weekend, when Jerry unexpectedly informed me that he'd have to stay at school for the next 2 weekends, I made the regrettable decision to go out with Jim. We went on a couple of dates, and after our third date, things escalated. And I ended up in his bed. We met at Jim's apartment 3 more times over the next 2 weeks while his fiancée was at work. I know what you're probably thinking about me right now, and I have to agree with you. I believe I temporarily lost my sense of judgment. However, as soon as Jerry returned home, I came back to my senses and immediately ended things with Jim. Jim was devastated and carefully pleaded with me to elope and run away with him. Breaking his heart was something I hated doing, but I remained firm and told him that we needed to erase this from our lives. I made it clear that we were both engaged and Jerry was the love of my life. Jim and I went our separate ways. He stopped coming to the store, and I haven't spoken to him in 29 years. 2 months later, he married his fiancée, let's call her Susie. 19 months later, I married Jerry. Since that time, we've had a happy marriage, and I genuinely mean that. We had a traditional marriage with Jerry as the provider, protector, and an excellent father. While I took care of the family, managed the household, and was a devoted stay-at-home mom. We loved our lives and had what most would consider an ideal marriage. However, all of this was shattered 3 days ago due to my carelessness. Now here's the backstory. Throughout my teenage years, and right up until a year before I married Jerry, I kept a detailed diary. When I moved out of my parents' house, I stored the diary in a cardboard box along with my yearbook and other school mementos. We placed this box and similar ones filled with school memories in the basement of our new home. Those boxes remained in the same spot in our basement for more than 25 years without anyone touching them. Honestly, I completely forgot about the contents of those boxes, including the fact that my diary was in one of them. Then this past Saturday, Jerry decided it was time to tidy up the basement and transfer everything from those boxes into plastic storage bins. He spent the entire morning cleaning down in the basement. When he finally came upstairs, he didn't say a word and headed down the hallway. I assumed he was just tired and was going to take a shower. He went into the bathroom and stayed there for a good 45 minutes. I checked on him, and he told me he was fine. Just reading. Little did I know what he was actually reading was my diary, which he found in one of the boxes. After he emerged from the bathroom, he walked right up to me holding the diary and said, "Look what I found." His face was filled with disgust and anger like I had never seen before. He then opened the diary and began reading the pages where I had written about Jim. I immediately asked him to stop and assured him I could explain, but he continued to read. I started crying and begged him to please stop, but he kept reading, growing increasingly agitated and speaking louder as he read on. When he finished reading, I attempted to speak, but he interrupted me saying, "Go pack a bag." I asked him why, and he replied firmly, "You're going to your parents." I didn't want to upset him further, so I went ahead and started packing. After I finished packing, I attempted to talk to him, but he simply said, "Leave." I pleaded with him, even going down on my knees, hugging his legs and begging, but he continued to insist. "Leave." By this point, his face had turned red and veins were bulging from his forehead. I had never witnessed him so furious. He has always been a composed and level-headed person. I left the house and drove to my parents' place. Once there, I explained what had transpired to them. They were taken aback and disappointed. My parents, both 81 years old, hold Jerry in high regard, considering him like a son. I clarified that what had occurred happened over 29 years ago and I had remained faithful throughout our marriage. They were deeply upset, and the shock left them unable to speak. I made numerous calls and sent texts to Jerry throughout the night, but he never responded. The following morning, I received a call from my daughter who began yelling at me, questioning how I could do such a thing to her dad. She mentioned that her father had a video call with her and her brother the previous night during which she sent them a file containing the crucial pages from my diary. I felt embarrassed and tried to explain the situation to my daughter, but she wasn't receptive and hung up. I then attempted to reach our son, but he didn't answer my calls and disregarded my texts and voicemails. I also made numerous attempts to contact Jerry, but he remained unresponsive. I went back to our house and stayed there the entire afternoon, but he never returned. Eventually, I went back to my parents' house. A little after 4 p.m., I received a call from Jim's wife, Susie. Susie began using profanity, hurling terrible insults at me, and warned me to steer clear of her if I knew what was best for me. I attempted to engage in a conversation with her, but she too abruptly ended the call. Later that night, a good friend of mine called and informed me that Jerry was at a popular local bar openly discussing the affair with everyone. I was devastated because this was entirely out of character for Jerry. My friend mentioned that he seemed intoxicated and not like his usual self, which greatly worried me because Jerry rarely ever drinks, typically having only 2 or 3 drinks in a year. I was extremely anxious and began calling and texting him repeatedly, but he remained unresponsive. I returned home and decided to wait for Jerry to come back. A little after 9 p.m., a friend of his dropped him off in our driveway. As soon as he entered the house, I embraced him tightly. Initially, he didn't respond, but eventually, he started hugging me back and we began talking. I could smell alcohol on him, and he was in tears questioning, "How could you do this to me?" I expressed my profound regret and explained that it had been a colossal mistake. Emphasizing that it had occurred almost 30 years ago, he claimed that our life had been constructed upon a falsehood. He went on to berate himself, expressing anger at feeling sinked by a loser of a man and a terrible wife. After making these remarks, he became highly agitated once more and instructed me to leave. I pleaded with him to let me stay, expressing my concern for his well-being. He calmly requested that I depart and allow him a week to contemplate matters before returning home. Despite my pleas for him to stay, I ultimately left in tears during the following week. I sent him heartfelt daily texts expressing my profound remorse and love, but he never responded. According to information from several friends, Jerry and Susie were spotted multiple times going out for drinks during this period. I'm uncertain whether they were merely meeting to exchange information or if they were engaged in a retaliatory affair. All I can say is that I feel an overwhelming sense of guilt for what I did to Jerry. I learned that Susie kicked Jim out and was planning to divorce him. He is devastated and emotionally shattered. There have been rumors circulating that Susie has been involved in infidelity for years, and the person who informed me believes she might be using the diary as a pretext for divorce due to Jerry and Susie. Nearly everyone in our town, which has a population of 3,600, now knows about the affair. Feedback I've received suggests that most people find Jim and me reprehensible but feel that we should be forgiven since this all transpired nearly 30 years ago. For now, I'm staying at my parents' house, anticipating my return home next week to be with Jerry. I understand his pain, but I believe he's reacting excessively. I hope that over the next week, he will come to his senses and both of us can begin the healing process. What advice can you offer on how to best handle this situation? I acknowledge that my actions were terrible, but I believe Jerry has blown this out of proportion. The affair occurred almost 3 decades ago, and since then, we've had a wonderful marriage and family. He feels that our life was constructed on deceit, which I disagree with. What are your thoughts on this matter? Thank you for allowing me to share my feelings. Update. First and foremost, I want to express my gratitude to everyone for their valuable feedback. It has truly been beneficial. I followed the advice of many by letting my husband take all the time he needs, assuring him that I'll be here when he's ready to have a conversation. It has been a few days, and I haven't received any word from him, but mutual friends have reported seeing him and mentioned that he appears to be doing well. I also want to emphasize that I have never reconnected with or had any contact with Jim since we put an end to our affair. Furthermore, I want to make it crystal clear that I have remained completely faithful throughout our entire marriage. And the thought of cheating on my husband has never crossed my mind. Except for that regrettable 2-week period with Jim. Lastly, my relationship with my kids is strained at the moment, particularly with my daughter who has been unkind. She unexpectedly decided to order ancestry kits for the family, and she called me with a hint of sarcasm inquiring if there was anything I wished to disclose before proceeding with the order. I assured her that there was nothing to disclose and that I was looking forward to the results. That's all for now, and I'll provide another update next week once I'm back home. Update. I'm back in my house, but now my husband and I are legally separated, and I'm absolutely devastated. When I returned home, Jerry handed me separation papers and informed me that he had relocated all my belongings to the spare bedroom. Additionally, he installed a key lock on our master bedroom to prevent my access. In our master bedroom, he's placed a small fridge, a food storage cupboard, and a coffee machine. At this point, I mainly see him when he's leaving for work or going out during the evenings. He's now handling all his cooking, cleaning, and laundry, and he's made it clear that we will be living as roommates without any commitments. He continues to meet with Susie and adamantly refuses to cease their interactions. Whenever I inquire about what's happening, he either ignores me or responds with, "I'm keeping a journal, and I'll share it with you in 30 years. On several occasions when I attempted to initiate intimacy, he callously told me to go to Jim if I need something. I still can't fathom what's unfolded. It's as though he's discarded our love and developed resentment toward me. I feel utterly shattered." According to a close friend of mine, her husband disclosed that Jerry was at a table with a group of men yesterday at a local social club we all belong to. Jim was also present and approached Jerry requesting a private conversation. Jerry initially ignored him, but Jim persisted even to the point of tears, pleading with Jerry in desperation. Based on the reports, Jerry responded to Jim by telling him to go away and warned him that staying out of sight would be in his best interest, or else he'd face consequences. Learning about this frightened me because Jerry has never displayed any meanness or violence before. I'm worried that something might have shifted in him mentally as he's no longer the kind and loving man I've known for 3 decades. At this point, I'm complying with Jerry's wishes and assured him that I'll be here when he's ready to have a conversation. I'm considering finding a part-time job to keep myself occupied since there isn't much for me to do all day now that Jerry has taken over most of the household tasks. That's all I have to share for now. I'll provide another update if anything noteworthy occurs. Thank you for your well wishes and blessings. Final update. I wanted to return and provide an update on my current situation. I believe it's the right thing to do given all the valuable feedback I've received over the past year. My circumstances have taken a turn for the worse. Jerry and I are now officially divorced, and I find myself completely alone. As I mentioned in my previous update, we were living separately under the same roof, and I was doing everything in my power to reconcile. We carried on this way for 2 months, and during that time, I began to believe that things were improving. Then one day, Jerry approached me with a request to talk. At this point, the anger had subsided, and he appeared solemn and sad. What he conveyed to me next shattered my spirit. He disclosed that he no longer had romantic feelings for me and desired a divorce. He also expressed his regret for the challenging behavior he exhibited in the past few months. I pleaded and implored him for several days, but his decision remained unwavering. He elaborated that he couldn't erase the memories of my infidelity and deception, particularly concerning me and Jim. Following this, he informed me that he had requested a transfer to the Tampa office and would be relocating closer to his parents. Sarasota, our daughter, Orlando, and son, Atlanta. This news left me utterly devastated. To cope with this situation, I've been attending therapy sessions 3 times a week, and it has been beneficial. My therapist explained that the discovery of the affair has fundamentally altered my husband and he is no longer the same person. He now sees me through a different lens. She advised me to grieve this loss as if Jerry had passed away because the man I loved has forever changed and cannot be brought back. While my children were initially angry with me, they are now deeply saddened by our divorce. They had hoped that their father would eventually calm down and reconcile with me. Both of them have come home to visit and made efforts to facilitate reconciliation. But Jerry had already made up his mind. My parents are feeling nothing but sadness and despair due to this situation. As mentioned earlier, Jerry was like a son to them, and he provided a lot of support. I've been trying to persuade them to move to Florida, but they are resistant to the idea. They insist on staying in our hometown even though most of their friends have passed away. I'll continue to work on them because living closer to my kids and Jerry would make me feel much better. On a positive note, I'm planning to visit my son in Atlanta and my daughter in Orlando during the holidays, which will keep me away for 2 months. While I'm there, I had also planned to visit my former in-laws in Sarasota. Surprisingly, when Jerry learned about my trip, he called and invited me to stay at his new place outside Tampa. I immediately accepted his offer. I hope that this might be an opportunity for us to reconcile. I believe he still loves me and misses me greatly as both my daughter and son have told me. I think he needed to distance himself from this town and the painful memories. And his affair and divorce were a way of punishing me. Now that he's done that, I believe he realizes that our love is enduring and we are meant to be together. Regarding Jim and Susie, they have also divorced. I heard that Susie was quite upset about Jerry's move, as they had become close, and he had supported her through her divorce. She insists they were just friends, and Jerry has never admitted to anything, but I've heard they had a passionate affair for several months before Jerry relocated. She has already visited him in Florida. And this really pains me deeply. If having an affair was what Jerry needed to work through his feelings and find healing, I suppose I can accept it. I'm burdened with immense regret for my foolish affair, and feel incredibly foolish for not getting rid of that diary when I had the chance nearly 29 years ago. I even considered shredding it back then, but ultimately chose to keep it. Shaking my head and kicking myself for that decision.
Thank you for tuning in to Audio Tales AI. If you enjoyed today's story, remember to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support keeps these stories coming. Until next time, remember, love, trust, and understanding are the foundation of a great relationship. But betrayal, lust, and deception make for the best YouTube videos.